If you look at a map of Europe, your eyes go to the familiar shapes of the continent. But out in the North Atlantic, sitting alone between Greenland and Norway, almost at the edge of the Arctic Circle, sits Iceland. At first glance, it looks like an afterthought, a volcanic island too cold and too remote to matter. But here's the first thing that surprises people. Iceland is bigger than Ireland. It is bigger than Hungary. It is bigger than the state of Kentucky. It sits on top of one of the world's most active volcanic systems, a mid-ocean ridge splitting the entire island in two as the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates slowly pull apart beneath it. It has 130 volcanoes, more active than anywhere else in Europe. It generates virtually all of its electricity and heat from geothermal energy pulled directly from the earth beneath its feet. Its rivers run so clean and fast that the tap water is considered among the purest in the world. By every geographic measure, Iceland is extraordinary. But when you switch the map to show where people actually live, something appears that stops you cold. Iceland has just 400,000 people. The city of Sacramento, California by itself has more residents than this entire country, and nearly 2/3 of those 400,000 are compressed into a single metropolitan area in the far southwest corner of the island. One city, one cluster of buildings against the sea, Reykjavik. The vast interior of Iceland, a highland wilderness of glaciers, lava fields, and steaming geothermal plains the size of a small European country, contains almost no permanent residents at all. So why does one of the most stable, safest, and most developed nations on Earth have almost nobody living in it? And why are retirees increasingly looking at this extraordinary island not as a vacation destination, but as a place to actually live? That's what we're going to find out today. To understand Iceland's empty map, you have to start with fire and ice. Iceland sits directly on the mid-Atlantic ridge, the seam where two tectonic plates pull away from each other at roughly the same rate your fingernails grow. The result is a landscape of such extreme geological violence that even today, several of Iceland's volcanoes erupt in years when other countries have no volcanic activity at all. When Eyjafjallajökull erupted in 2010, it shut down European air travel for weeks. Beneath the famous landscapes of waterfalls, geysers, and black sand beaches runs a constant thermal pulse that makes roughly half of Iceland's interior too geologically unstable, too cold, or too high altitude for permanent settlement. The Central Highlands, a vast plateau at 1,000 meters above sea level, are crossed by rivers that flood every spring and roads that close for months each winter. The few tracks through the interior are marked F roads, passable only by four-wheel drive vehicles in summer months. The Vatnajökull Glacier alone covers 8% of the entire country's land area under hundreds of meters of ice. Nature in Iceland is not a backdrop, it is a force. Now leave Reykjavik behind and look at the coastline. Iceland was first settled by Norse Vikings around 874 AD, and every community they established was on the coast, near the fishing grounds, near the harbors, near the only reliable source of food on an island with almost no arable farmland. Only about 1% of Iceland's land can be farmed. The interior offered nothing. Even today, the road that rings the entire island, the famous Route 1, the Ring Road, follows the coast for its entire length of 1,332 kilometers, never once cutting through the empty highland interior. Small towns appear at coastal points like beads on a string, each one a fishing harbor, each one dependent on the sea. The interior is silence, and Reykjavik, sitting at the island's best natural harbor at its southwest tip, became the gravitational center from which everything else orbited. Today, about 64% of the entire population lives in the capital region. The second largest town, Akureyri in the north, has just 20,000 people. Everyone else is strung along the coast in communities that would rank as small suburbs in any American city. But the volcanic landscape and the fishing economy are only half the story. Iceland's population has always been tiny, not because of disaster or immigration on a devastating scale, but because the island was never capable of supporting large numbers of people before the industrial age. When the Black Death swept through Europe in the 14th century, it killed half of Iceland's already small population. The Little Ice Age of the 17th and 18th centuries brought crop failures and famine that killed thousands more. Smallpox epidemics, volcanic eruptions that poison the grasslands, catastrophic volcanic winters. Iceland has faced the full force of natural catastrophe repeatedly throughout its history. As late as 1900, Iceland had fewer than 80,000 people. It didn't reach 100,000 until the 1920s. The population doubled only in the second half of the 20th century, driven by the mechanization of fishing and the industrialization of the economy. Iceland's small population is not a recent development. It is written into the island's geology. But here's where Iceland's story takes a completely different turn from any other country in this series, because Iceland is not an affordable retirement destination. Let's be completely honest about that up front. Iceland is one of the most expensive countries in the world, with a cost of living that matches New York City. A one-bedroom apartment in Reykjavik rents for $1,500 to $2,500 per month. A restaurant meal costs $25 to $50 per person. A monthly grocery bill for one person runs $400 to $600. An average couple needs $5,000 to $7,000 per month to live comfortably in Reykjavik. Iceland is not where you go to stretch a dollar. So why does it belong in this conversation? Because for a specific kind of retiree, one who has spent decades accumulating assets, who has sold a home in California or New York, who has a generous pension or significant investment income, Iceland offers something that no amount of money can buy elsewhere. Safety so absolute, it barely registers as a concept. A natural environment so extraordinary, it functions as its own daily therapy. A healthcare system so excellent that medical worry essentially disappears from your life. A society so functional, so equal, so clean, that the daily friction of ordinary life in America simply ceases to exist. Iceland doesn't attract retirees with a low price tag. It attracts them with a quality of life that the rest of the world is still trying to figure out how to achieve. Over the past decade, a small but growing number of American retirees and remote income earners have been discovering what Iceland's empty map actually offers. Not affordability. Extraordinary. Let me show you what I mean. Reykjavik is the northernmost capital city in the world, and it is nothing like what the word northern suggests to most Americans. The city is compact, colorful, and startlingly cosmopolitan for a capital of 130,000 people. The Hallgrímskirkja Church towers over a dense grid of corrugated iron houses painted in saturated blues and reds and greens. The restaurant scene, driven partly by the global tourism boom, is world-class. The music scene has produced internationally recognized artists out of all proportion to the population. The streets are clean to a degree that visitors from large American cities consistently describe as disorienting, and surrounding it all is the natural world on a scale that simply does not exist in any other European capital. Geothermal swimming pools scattered across the city provide year-round outdoor swimming in naturally heated water. The northern lights are visible from the city limits between September and March. The midnight sun keeps the sky bright until 11 p.m. in summer. For retirees with sufficient income, the monthly budget in Reykjavik looks like this. Rent for a quality one-bedroom apartment, $1,500 to $2,500. Food and regular dining, $600 to $900. Healthcare, essentially zero once residency is established, as the public system covers all legal residents. Transportation and entertainment, $300 to $500. Total for a single person, $2,400 to $3,900. A couple with combined retirement income of $6,000 to $8,000 per month can live extremely well. Iceland is not for retirees on Social Security alone. It is for retirees who built something and want to live somewhere worthy of it. But Reykjavik isn't the only option. Look north along the ring road to Akureyri, Iceland's second city, nestled at the end of a long fjord in the north of the country. Akureyri sits surrounded by mountains, with a botanical garden that somehow keeps growing at 65 degrees north latitude, a small but excellent art scene, and rents that run 25 to 30% below Reykjavik. A one-bedroom here costs $1,000 to $1,500 per month. The pace is slower, the winter's darker, but the community is tight-knit and internationally diverse for its size. And then there are the smaller coastal towns, Selfoss to the south, Vik with its black sand beaches, the Snæfellsnes peninsula towns of Grundarfjordur and Stykkishólmur, fishing communities where the landscape outside your door is the entire point. For retirees willing to embrace the remoteness, these towns offer Icelandic life at lower cost and higher authenticity. Now let's talk about the practical side, because Iceland's residency pathway for Americans is straightforward but requires careful planning. Americans can enter Iceland without a visa and stay for up to 90 days under the Schengen Agreement. For longer-term or permanent residents, the primary pathway for retired Americans is the Financially Independent Person Permit, known as the Self-Sufficiency Permit. To qualify, you must demonstrate sufficient financial means to support yourself in Iceland without accessing the Icelandic welfare system. For a retired couple, this means demonstrating income or savings equivalent to approximately $2,400 to $3,000 per month at minimum, which in practice means you are showing substantially more than this to gain approval. You must also have valid health insurance for your first 6 months until you qualify for the public system, and you must show proof of accommodation in Iceland. There is no minimum age requirement and no investment threshold. After 4 years of continuous legal residence, you can apply for permanent residency. Citizenship becomes available after 7 years of continuous legal residence. Iceland has no specific retirement visa distinct from the general financially independent permit, and no formal program targeting foreign retirees the way Panama's Pensionado or Belize's QRP do. The pathway exists. It simply requires documentation and financial self-sufficiency. Iceland's healthcare is one of its most compelling qualities for retirees. The country operates a universal public healthcare system that covers all legal residents regardless of income or pre-existing conditions. Once you have been legally resident for 6 months, you are folded into the same healthcare system that Icelanders use, a system that consistently ranks among the top 5 in the world for outcomes. Iceland has one of the highest life expectancies in the world at over 83 years. It has one of the lowest infant mortality rates. The system combines universal primary care with excellent specialist access and modern hospital infrastructure in Reykjavik. There are no private hospitals in Iceland. The public system is the only system, and it is excellent. For retirees who have spent years navigating the American healthcare system's complexity and cost, Iceland's model is genuinely startling in its simplicity. You pay taxes, you get care. That is the entire transaction. Now, let's talk about something that matters just as much as the cost: community. Iceland's expat community is small and concentrated primarily in Reykjavik, but it is established, well-connected, and experienced. The international community, drawn by Iceland's quality of life, its tech sector, and the tourism industry, now makes up roughly 18% of the total population, a higher proportion than in most comparable European nations. English is spoken virtually universally in Iceland. Icelanders learn it beginning in primary school and use it fluidly in professional and social life. You will never struggle to communicate in Iceland. Learning Icelandic adds depth to the experience, but it is never a barrier to daily life in the way that language can be in France or Germany or Japan, and the lifestyle itself. Iceland moves at a pace that is genuinely different from the rest of the developed world. The concept of huga, often applied to Denmark, has an Icelandic cousin called Þetta reddast, which translates roughly as, "It will all work out." It is a cultural disposition toward equanimity and resilience in the face of the island's unpredictable nature that has filtered into daily life as a kind of foundational calm. Long summer evenings that never grow dark, midnight barbecues in the garden, spontaneous northern light sightings in autumn, a geothermal pool around every corner in winter. Icelanders are ranked among the happiest people on Earth. Crime is so rare that police incidents make national news. The political culture is so stable and consensus-driven that governance barely registers as a source of daily stress. For American retirees who have been exhausted by the noise and anxiety of life in the United States, Iceland offers something almost medicinal in its quietness. But here's what makes this moment particularly interesting. Iceland is changing. The massive tourism boom of the last decade has brought infrastructure investment, an international restaurant scene, and a cosmopolitan energy to Reykjavik that did not exist 20 years ago. Property values have risen significantly, but for buyers with American real estate equity to deploy, Iceland's residential property market remains accessible. A well-appointed 2-bedroom apartment in a good Reykjavik neighborhood sells for $400,000 to $700,000. A house in a smaller coastal town, $200,000 to $400,000. For American retirees who own property in expensive U.S. markets, The trade is often financially neutral or better, with the difference being that Iceland comes with a quality of life that San Francisco or Boston cannot match. Iceland remains one of geography's great paradoxes, an island bigger than Ireland, sitting at the edge of the Arctic Circle, riddled with volcanoes and glaciers, powered entirely by the heat of the earth beneath it, and home to just 400,000 people, most of them huddled in a single corner against the North Atlantic wind. Its map wasn't drawn by poverty or violence or political chaos. It was drawn by ice that covers 8% of the land, by volcanic highlands too inhospitable for settlement, by a geological youth so raw and active that the island is still being made as you walk across it. But for American retirees who have built something, who have the income and the freedom to choose where in the world to live their remaining decades, Iceland's empty map isn't a warning about what the country lacks. It is a promise about what it has preserved: the cleanest air in Europe, the safest streets in the developed world, a healthcare system so good it barely requires thought, a natural environment so extraordinary it recalibrates your sense of what daily life can feel like. Iceland did not become extraordinary by accident. It became extraordinary because its geography kept it small, and its smallness forced it to take care of what it had: a country that is almost empty and almost incomparable. Before we wrap up, if Iceland is seriously on your radar, here are 10 facts you need to know before you make the move. Fact number 1. Iceland has been ranked the safest country in the world every year since 2008, without exception, by the Global Peace Index. Not the safest in Europe, the safest in the world. Violent crime in Iceland is so rare that murders make national headlines and are remembered individually. The police are largely unarmed. There are no gangs. There are no no-go zones. For American retirees accustomed to navigating the safety calculus of neighborhood by neighborhood, zip code by zip code, Iceland eliminates this mental burden entirely. Fact number 2. Your U.S. Social Security benefits are paid in full, even if you live in Iceland. Iceland is not on the Social Security Administration's list of countries where payments are restricted. The United States and Iceland also have a totalization agreement, which means your years of working in the U.S. count toward any Icelandic benefits you might eventually become eligible for, and prevents double Social Security taxation. Fact number 3. Iceland generates nearly 100% of its electricity and heat from renewable sources. Approximately 70% comes from hydroelectric power and 30% from geothermal energy. Iceland produces so much geothermal energy that it heats virtually all of its buildings through piped hot water from the ground, keeping heating costs dramatically lower than you would expect for a country this far north. Your electricity bill in Iceland will be modest despite the latitude. Fact number 4. Iceland has no military. It is a NATO member but maintains no standing army, air force, or navy of its own, relying on collective defense under the alliance. The budget that other nations spend on defense, Iceland spends on education, healthcare, and infrastructure. The result is a social compact so well-funded and well-functioning that the basics of life, healthcare, education, clean water, reliable power, safe streets simply work. For retirees who have spent careers paying American taxes and watching public services erode, Iceland's functional governance is its own kind of luxury. Fact number 5. Iceland is the only country in the world where you can see the mid-Atlantic ridge above sea level. The Thingvellir National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site just 40 minutes from Reykjavik, sits in the Rift Valley between the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates. You can walk through a fissure where two continental plates are pulling apart. You can snorkel or dive in the crystal-clear water that fills the rift between them, with visibility of over 100 meters in water of extraordinary purity. For retirees who want to live next to something genuinely unrepeatable on Earth, Thingvellir is a 10-minute drive away. Fact number 6. Iceland has more hot springs and geothermal pools per capita than any country on Earth. The geothermal swimming pool, or Sundlaug, is the central institution of Icelandic social life. Every neighborhood in Reykjavik has one. Every small town in Iceland has one. They are open year-round, heated to between 38 and 44 degrees Celsius, and function as the place where Icelanders conduct the actual business of their social lives: discussion, relaxation, community. Entry costs under $5. For retirees interested in community life and physical wellness, this infrastructure is extraordinary. Fact number 7. Iceland's tap water is among the purest in the world. It comes directly from glacial springs and is not treated with chlorine or fluoride because it requires no treatment. Icelanders do not buy bottled water. The joke is that the water in Iceland is better than bottled water sold elsewhere. For retirees who have spent decades filtering their drinking water or paying for delivery services, this is a quality of life upgrade. Fact number 8. Iceland has universal health care that covers all legal residents, regardless of age or pre-existing conditions. After 6 months of legal residency, you are enrolled in the same public system that Icelanders use, a system built on the Nordic model of high-quality, universal access and zero financial barriers to care. There are no private hospitals in Iceland, which means the entire medical establishment focuses its resources on the public system. Specialist care, hospitalizations, surgeries, and emergency services are all covered. For American retirees facing the cost and complexity of American healthcare, this fact alone changes the financial calculation of retirement abroad entirely. Fact number 9. The Northern Lights are visible from Reykjavik. You do not need to travel to a remote location, charter a special tour, or wait for years of good luck. The Aurora Borealis is visible from Iceland's capital city on clear nights between September and March, which is roughly half the year. They appear above the harbor. They appear while you walk home from dinner. They appear outside your apartment window. For most Americans, the Northern Lights are a bucket list item, requiring a special trip to northern Norway or Canada. In Iceland, they are a regular feature of winter evenings. Fact number 10. Iceland's permanent residency is available after 4 years of legal residence and citizenship after 7 years. Icelandic citizenship comes with an Icelandic passport, providing visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to approximately 188 countries, one of the most powerful passports in the world. Iceland is also a Schengen member, meaning Icelandic residents can travel freely throughout 27 European countries without border checks. For American retirees interested in European mobility and access, Icelandic residency provides a level of geographic freedom that few other pathways can match. Iceland isn't for every retiree. It doesn't offer the low cost of living of Bolivia or Paraguay, the warm weather of Belize, or the simple visa pathway of Panama. What Iceland offers is something different and rarer. A place so safe your risk calculus resets completely. A natural environment so extraordinary it functions as daily medicine for the spirit. Healthcare. So universal and excellent, it simply stops being a concern. A society so functional, you forget that governance can fail. For retirees with the income to make it work, Iceland is not a compromise. It is one of the finest places on earth to be alive, a country that is almost empty and almost incomparable. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you consider retiring in Iceland? And which appeals to you more, the cosmopolitan culture and infrastructure of Reykjavik, the fjordside quiet of Akureyri, or the raw and remote beauty of the coastal towns along the Ring Road? Leave your answer in the comments below.